Hello, my friends. It is Thursday, February 27th, 2025, and these are seven big stories for today. So we're going to start here. This is an image of the US stock market, and it didn't do very well yesterday. I mean, Facebook's doing okay and Oracle's doing okay, but okay, what's going on? So Jason J. Smart posted this. US stock market crashes. Well, not a crash. I mean, it's been going down. It's not doing well. It's not healthy. Lose over day, losing 500 billion in just 1 hour immediately after Trump announced new tariffs against the European Union. Okay, he talks about this and then he talks about not doing it, and then talks about doing this and then not doing it. The market lost substantially more in an hour than the value of all US aid to Ukraine. Okay, 500 billion. Like, so that's the effect of this erratic talking about, well, we're going to do this, we're not going to do that, we're going to do that. Okay, so that's actually what's happening. Now, let's just look. So Trump came into office on January 20th. So somewhere over here. It's a little bit more than that. And it was about at this level when he came in. And so it's been up and down and up and down and up and down. Okay, so part is there some to the Trump effect? So February 13th, when he announces the Putin call, like, hey, I had this phone call with Putin, and then it looked a little optimistic. And then February 18th is when we had the actual meeting. So the markets would react on the 19th with the Russians and United States delegates getting to meet each other. And then we see this. Now, I'm not going to say that it's necessarily correlated to that, but markets react to bad news or news about what they anticipate in world events. So at least part of this decline is probably attributable to that. But okay, the market will rebound. It's the United States economy. It's pretty strong. So okay, that's big story number one. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's plane is heading to Washington. Well, actually, from the time that this happened, he went to Ireland and he was meeting there with some, I don't know if it was a prime minister or president or what exactly it is in Ireland. I just didn't pay close enough attention to that story. Okay, so he's meeting there on his way to Washington tomorrow, where he'll meet with Trump. U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky are planning to meet at the White House on February 28th, likely to sign a U.S.-Ukraine mineral deal. The draft agreement of the deal, published ahead of the meeting, does not provide U.S. security assistance or security guarantees to Ukraine. However, FT, that is the Financial Times, published a draft bilateral U.S.-Ukrainian deal on February 26 that states that the United States wants to, quote, invest alongside Ukraine in a free, sovereign, and secure Ukraine, unquote, and supports, quote, Ukraine's efforts to obtain security guarantees needed to establish lasting peace, unquote, but does not include any concrete U.S. provisions of security assistance. I think they need to amend that to say that this deal does not happen if Ukraine is not independent and free and whatever. I mean, at the time that Ukraine is not under conditions of its own sovereignty, this deal is off, or something along those lines. Now, I don't think that'll happen necessarily, but I like the improved language. The first deal was a monstrosity. That first $500 billion deal that had nothing in it, and like that was just that made me angry. Okay, the cabinet authorized the signing of an agreement with the U.S. on rare earth metals by Minister of the Economy and Foreign Minister. Meanwhile, the presidential airplane has just left Poland. It's heading for the U.S., again, via Ireland. Okay, in other news, Lavrov and other Kremlin officials continued rejections of a ceasefire and other terms that Trump and European leaders have identified as necessary to achieve a lasting peace in Ukraine. That demonstrates that Putin remains uninterested in meaningful negotiations. I think we're talking about, oh no, they're going to make this false peace. It's going to be a bad deal. I don't think it's happening anytime soon. If I were a betting man, I would bet you that it's not going to happen before August, and I don't even think that's going to be it. I think it'll be later on. This is just my gut. I can't prove this, so take that with a grain of salt. But I don't think anything's going to happen anytime soon. I know because we heard, on day one, we heard 90 days, we heard 6 months, whatever. it's just not going to be soon. Okay, U.S. side, next story. U.S. siding with Russia and Belarus in the UN vote sparks anger. Here's the actual language of this. UN General Assembly on Monday, the U.S. joined Russia and Moscow's closest ally, Belarus, as well as North Korea, in opposing a resolution condemning Moscow's war against Ukraine. Okay, who you are, like your mom told you that I don't want you hanging out with those kids because who you are is who your friends are. Like that's kind of what's happening here. In another vote in the 15-member UN Security Council, Russia and the U.S. approved an American-backed resolution calling for a swift end to the conflict, but it avoided labeling Russia as the aggressor or acknowledging Ukraine's territorial integrity. Okay, if you can't define the problem, you can't really deal with the problem. Acting U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Dorothy Shea, said the Washington-backed resolution, quote, puts us on the path to peace. No, it does not. No, it absolutely does not. We've made the problem worse by doing what we've done here. Many former officials and even a serving Republican senator lined up to condemn the American motions. Okay. Dozens of dignitaries also walked out of Russia's speech to the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva in support of Ukraine. In the hallway, they unfolded a Ukrainian and Crimean Tatar flag. Today is a day of resistance to occupation of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. On that day in 2014, Crimeans protested against Russian occupation of the peninsula, and it didn't go well for them. The next day, special forces took over the building, and it was bad. So here they are. They're walking out of the actual meeting where the Russians were speaking and unfurling both the Ukrainian flag and the Crimean Tatar flag. Okay. 40 U.S. lawmakers have urged Trump to stop supporting Putin's illegal war in Ukraine. Quote, the best way to end the war in Ukraine is to support Ukraine with arms, not give aid and comfort to Russia, its puppets and client states, and dictators around the world. Signed by 40 U.S. legislators. Okay. Meantime, Russia has its own solution to working with the United States, and that's like, let's make a deal. In Riyadh, the Kremlin's representative said that Russia expects the return of U.S. oil companies and joint projects in the Arctic. What this means is that Russia needs sanctions lifted to restart a $500 billion deal with ExxonMobil. See this here in the Moscow Times. A different solution, a better solution. This is the Italian Prime Minister, Meloni, saying that the most effective security guarantees for Ukraine are its NATO membership. Now, Trump has just ruled that out. But according to her, other security guarantee solutions, quote, seem more complicated to me and frankly less effective. That's right. Now, when we're talking about first things, like Putin talks about, we got to get to the causes of this. Okay. Maria Zakharova, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia, has posted this. NATO membership for Ukraine will cause the conflict to escalate out of control. That's a threat to try to keep that from happening, jeopardizing global security. The conflict cannot be resolved without addressing its root causes. One of the important ones was the West going back on its pledge not to expand NATO. Okay. There was no written agreement. There was nothing like that, but they always point back to that. And by the way, the Soviet Union's no more. Russia is a small portion of what the Soviet Union was. And let me ask this. If the problem here is NATO, what's we talk about root causes, right? If the root cause of the conflict with Ukraine is Ukrainian membership in NATO, what's the root cause of NATO? The root cause of NATO is Soviet aggression or Russian aggression, as Russia is the inheritor, let's say. Okay, so North Atlantic Treaty Organization, 1949. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization was created in 1949 by the United States and Canada and several Western European nations to provide collective security against the Soviet Union. So the root cause of NATO is actually Russia. So let's deal with the root cause, which is Russia, which has never been defeated and continues with its expansionistic, imperialist agenda because it's never been defeated, right? Germany's not a problem anymore. Japan's not a problem anymore because they've been defeated and they're not now playing nice with the rest of the world. Okay. So let's look at NATO, their expansion over time. If you look at this, you'll see the different colors change, like Finland and Sweden are the last ones. But let's look at it again. 1949, 1952, 1955, 1982, 1990, 1999, 2004, 2009, 2017, 2020, 2023. What you see is that these countries are running away from the sphere of influence that the Russians had. So over time, those Eastern European countries are joining in order to get away from Russia, and they can't physically pick up and move, so they're running under the protection of NATO. Anna from Ukraine posted this: I cannot comment on Trump because even when he comments himself, there are grave incoherences. That's correct. That is what he's doing. And I think he's actually doing that intentionally, although I'm not 100% sure about that. But that is clearly what he is doing. And that's kind of how he negotiates about things. He's all over the map. So don't take any one thing that he says at face value. Okay, Jason J. Smart. Jason J. Smart used to be a pollster and political operative in the United States. So listen carefully to what he's saying here. Trump's position on Ukraine will shift only when he sees his poll numbers collapse. So far, he has lost 7 points in 1 month. That's a lot. 62% of Americans sympathize with Ukraine, only 4% with Russia. That's very fair. That's like a very tiny portion of the United States. I've never seen a Russian flag or a sticker or support Russia or anything like that. Anywhere I've gone, I've seen plenty of Ukraine stuff, but never any Russian anything. Even 49% of Trump voters side with Ukraine. There's a lot of Trump voters that side with Ukraine. These Republicans still remember what it meant to be a conservative Republican. Okay, 35% believe that Trump favors Russia, including 10% of his own voters, a perception that could become a serious liability. Now, this 10%, like, isn't that interesting? 10% of his own voters. So a very small percent really believe that he favors Russia. Like, no, he doesn't really. Like, that's the way that they think. Okay. If Trump is seen as too close to Russia, it will damage his approval at a critical moment, with 47% of Americans saying that the country is on the wrong track, including 17% of Trump voters. He needs political wins. Key takeaway: Trump won't change his Ukraine policy because of principles. He'll change when his numbers force him to, and we'll show you how to do something about that in just a moment. Okay. Bernie Sanders. What a weird, weird world this is when I find myself agreeing with Bernie Sanders. Okay, let's look at this.
I do not want to hear one Republican come to the floor of the Senate and talk about freedom unless that senator has the guts to call out Trump for the lies that he is telling about Putin and the war in Ukraine. Mr. President, it was Russia that started the war, not Ukraine. It is Putin who is the dictator, not Zelensky. This country must not align itself with Putin and authoritarianism. We must fight for democracy all over the world.
Okay, what a strange, strange world it is when I agree with Bernie Sanders. I'm about as conservative as Bernie is progressive, and wow. Okay, now with that, I feel a lot better about siding with Mike Pence here. This is an old Ronald Reagan advertisement that somehow has an adult content label on X, on Twitter. Like, why would you not be able to show this? I'll show you the video in just a moment. It goes back to there's a bear in the woods. For some people, the bear is easy to see. Others don't see it at all. This was a 1984 Ronald Reagan commercial during his campaign. America needs to see the bear again. Stand with our allies. Stand up to our enemies. The road to peace begins with American strength. Now, I'll show you this video. You tell me if this should be labeled as adult content. Okay.
For some people, there is a bear in the woods. For some people, the bear is easy to see. Others don't see it at all. Some people say the bear is tame. Others say it's vicious and dangerous. Since no one can really be sure who's right, isn't it smart to be as strong as the bear? If there is a bear.
Okay, Clearly, it was an allusion to the Soviet Union. This is, a Reagan commercial, being prepared for peace by being strong, right? That's a very different mentality, and this is where I still am. I haven't shifted my position, but okay. Now, what can you do about it? So, if you go to www.whitehouse.gov, G-O-V, whitehouse.gov, and then go down to do a control F to find and click on contact, you'll get this thing that tells you about all these, put in your name and your address and your phone number and everything else. Okay. And then put comments like this. This is what I'm writing. President Trump, I'm a lifelong, no, you don't have to say you're a lifelong Republican. Ooh, let me capitalize R in Republican. I'm a lifelong Republican. I'm shocked by the way that you've handled Putin while calling Zelensky a dictator. I urge you to support Ukraine, a democracy invaded by an authoritarian neighbor. You are writing your legacy right now, and history will not be kind to you if you back Putin. Now, it doesn't really matter what you say, as long as you say something like, please support Ukraine. If you just said that and then hit send, and I'm going to hit submit, and there we are, and that's all that it takes. Okay, so all you need to do is actually say, please support Ukraine, and they'll register that. You don't have to be eloquent. Igor Shushko has posted this, Dictator Zelensky. Now, this comes from his first speech in the Verkhovna Rada when he was first inaugurated. Quote, I do not want my picture in your offices. The president is not an idol, an icon, or a portrait. Hang your kids' photos instead, and look at them each time that you're making a decision. I talked about that in my book. I remember citing that. He said that during his inauguration. Okay, my friends, that's all that I have. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.